Marwan, I mean, first of all, a big thank you from us at Euromoney for all of your support and help and guidance in putting this conference together, and also let me also thank your team publicly for the hard work that they do. The fact that this conference has run relatively smoothly so far is a testament to the huge amount of work that both the Euromoney team and your team have done. They make it look easy, but and I know, and you too, that a lot of work behind the scenes. So thank you from us.
Thank you. It's actually our pleasure to have Euromoney conferences happening in Sharjah, and for the first time in the United Arab Emirates. I think this goes back to almost a year ago when we started this
It was about that, yeah, wasn't it?
And we're glad. A special thanks to everyone that have been here supporting us, whether attending this event or has been with us from the day one, since we signed the agreement till the preparation, and having a great turnout today and yesterday. So good thanks to everyone that has been here supporting us in making one of the important events happening in Sharjah, which is basically the Euromoney Emirates conference.
Well, we don't need to go on with it, but we've enjoyed it. We look forward to doing it again. It's something that fills a definite hole in our calendar, and we're very happy to be here. So, as I said in my opening remarks, I arrived in Sharjah at 9 o'clock on Sunday night, and I had never visited the Emirate before, and I learned an enormous amount yesterday about what you're doing. But you are, as it were, in the driving seat of this. So what I would like to start this discussion is if you could just quickly give us the view from 36,000 feet on the history of the Emirates, on where you're going and what you're doing, and then we'll broaden that conversation out. And we will also take some questions from you, so do get prepared to ask Marwan in a second, but just give us the sort of the background idea.
Maybe before starting my presentation or my presentation of Sharjah, is I would like to know how many of you have just visited Sharjah and are traveling from abroad. So is everybody a resident here, or you're actually coming to Sharjah for the first time? Can I see some hands?
First time in Sharjah? Put your hands up.
4, 5, 6,
7.
So a lot of you might not really know a lot about Sharjah. And just to put numbers here, 70 years ago, Sharjah was totally different. Today we have 1.4 million people living in Sharjah. 70 years ago, just in 1947, we had less than 20,000 people living here. Just imagine the amount of change that have happened within 70 years. And that's just two generations. An emirate that has been chosen since the 1800s as a hub for the British. Sharjah used to be a major player when it comes to diplomacy, when it comes to cultural activities, when it comes to the center of trade, since more than 100 years ago. So when we talk about trade...
Wasn't this the place where the Imperial Airways, when
yes.
if you flew from London to India, one of the places you stopped was Sharjah?
Exactly. So the Royal Air Force have chosen Sharjah as the base that connects east to west. So when we talk about being centrally located, it's not us that said it. It's basically the British have chosen to come to the United Arab Emirates and to choose Sharjah to have the hub. So if you're traveling in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and even the 70s, you would actually travel from Sharjah to be connected to the world. And that's so special. So when we talk about the economy of Sharjah, it's so diversified. It's so diversified to the sense that we don't actually depend on oil, and oil is just 1% of our GDP. So when we talk about economic diversification, it's truly diversified. In the 70s, His Highness decided that Sharjah is going to become one of the most diversified, so he opened up the economy to the level that he gave the opportunity to a lot of investors to come and establish their companies in Sharjah. Since the 70s, Sharjah was one of the Emirates that didn't make a difference between an Emirati and an Arab investor, and even an Indian investor. So a lot of companies that have established in Sharjah and today are not only in Sharjah, are globally well located, have happened to start in Sharjah. It might be from a small shop to a big trading company, from a small factory to one of the biggest in the world. And there is a reason for that. I think one of the main reasons is that Sharjah is one of the most welcoming cities around the region. It respects investors, it encourages investors, it supports investors, and you rarely can talk about that when you travel around different cities around the globe. Is that there is a government is so close to an investor that they basically listen to every single message or comment that they have. And I think what is so amazing about Sharjah is that it's centrally located within the United Arab Emirates. It's one of the Emirates that sits on the Indian Ocean, but also on the Arabian Gulf. It's the only Emirate that has 3 seaports, and it can actually be a competitive advantage because it connects you from one coast to another coast without going to the Straits of Hormuz.
I'm going to ask a sort of devil's advocate question, but you know, Sharjah, as you say, 1.4 million people. The Emirates itself, neither of these places are really what I would call big markets. No one is going to come to set up a sizable business that is servicing Sharjah. It's always going to be somewhere out facing. What is the market opportunity that you see for international companies locating here? Not about the competitive advantage of Sharjah, but about the world around. What did they get?
Sure. I think this is something that not everybody has been talking about, is that between the 4 hours flying distance, we have 1/3 of the world population. Within 7 hours, we have 2/3 of the world population. You have a market size of not the United Arab Emirates. It might be too small, but you have the GCC, you have the Arab world, you have the Indian subcontinent, you have Africa connecting to Africa, and you have Iran, Iraq, and Afghanistan. So you're within a location where the global market is basically the highest growth in it. What is important about companies is when Sharjah focused on catering companies, it looked at small and medium-sized companies.
Yeah.
And today we have one of the biggest center for small and medium-sized. More than 55,000 well-established companies have started in Sharjah. Yesterday we had Adil Ali speaking about Air Arabia's success that has started in Sharjah 15 years ago. From a company that started with 50 million dirhams today to a company that is valued, I think, in the market in the 2 billion or 3 billion dirhams. And that shows how an economy like Sharjah accepts small companies to grow. In yesterday's session, we have even Gulf Tainer, a company that is responsible of managing Khalid Port and Khorfakan Port. 35 years ago, they were managing one seaport. Today, they manage 16 seaports around the globe. And I'm talking about Port Canaveral in the United States of America, the first company from the Arab world that actually manages ports in America.
Not DP World.
Not DP World, in Florida.
Go Sharjah.
And we manage seaports in Recife, in Brazil, and in St. Petersburg. Just imagine the strength of a company that started in Sharjah. And guess what? When we talk about logistics, Lufthansa have chosen to be in Sharjah 20 years ago. Today, Lufthansa has the biggest operation out of Germany. Just imagine, out of Germany, you would think somewhere else. It's in Sharjah. There is a reason for that. The government listens, and this is very important.
It is a tremendous success story, and I'm always astonished when I look at the pictures of Sharjah and Abu Dhabi and even in Dubai 70 years ago. The transformation in the space of one lifetime is absolutely incredible. However, the world is not a place that allows a country to rest on its history. Speaking as a Brit, I know that. We'll talk about that in a minute. And the world is changing and the world is moving forward. Let's talk about the sort of technology side first and then come back to trade and protectionism. Where are you positioning this country for the digital future, for the automated future? People believe that that's where we're going, and unless you're competitive in that space, soon economies will fall behind. So how are you going to address that opportunity, that challenge?
Yeah, I think one of the great initiatives that we have within the federal government, and not only within Sharjah, is that our government is moving from an e-government to a mobile government. We're moving towards where the people want us. In yesterday's speech, I spoke about Bitcoin, I spoke about e-wallets, I spoke about a transformation in technology and innovation. And within the Emirates, we believe in what we say because that's the future. We don't say it as a marketing message. We believe that we have a very good infrastructure developed for when it comes to the internet, which basically is an infrastructure development that the government, whether it's Ittisalat or do have developed here. Now the system is moving towards a digitalized economy, an economy that doesn't depend anymore on papers, but it moves to basically the IoT of things, you know, the Internet of Things, which is basically part of the fourth revolution. We are not far away. We have a focus on research to the level to transform the people. And I think we're in a world that we can adapt things very easily, much easier than many countries around the globe. And I think this is one of the most competitive advantage within the Emirates, United Arab Emirates leadership, is that we have it from the top level leadership, whether it's from the Prime Minister or even the President. There is a whole system to develop a way where our economy is basically transforming itself. We live in a disruption here. There is nothing that we think that cannot happen. Everything is possible to happen within our economy. And I think we have an acceptance from people, and we have the government sector is a driving force. It's not lagging behind the private sector. And this is something that makes the Emirates a unique place. We have e-government and a mobile government that has established several years ago. And today we're seeing how the results. So if you want to set up a company, you can basically set up a company within 2 hours getting a trade license. Tell me where in the world you can get a trade license of a company within 2 hours?
Estonia.
Estonia. One of our competitors.
Sorry. Which is, interestingly enough, exactly the same size population as Sharjah. But sorry, I mean, it's unusual that you can do something that quickly. And in fact, countries like the US, it's actually going the other direction. It's taking longer to set things up. I mean, you know, there are the issue of the government policy towards digitization, towards the fourth industrial revolution, whatever you want to call it, and that's great. And unequivocally, Sharjah and the UAE is at the forefront of that within the Arab world. There are questions, though, on what I would call the core digital infrastructure. So Sharjah doesn't, for example, have any server farms, or you know, doesn't have its own pieces of physical infrastructure. Is that something that you're looking at and deploying, you know, the physical infrastructure of the digital world, which is very important?
Exactly. I believe that within the RTI Park and the American University of Sharjah Enterprises, they're building that infrastructure to make sure that it is moving ahead with our directions. I believe that this entity was recently announced, and it is going to be a driver for us when it comes to research, and they're going to basically build those structures to make sure that we are in line with Sharjah government's vision towards digitalizing, and when it comes to having that competitive advantage compared to others.
I want to leave some time for questions, but I have to ask you the question that's on my mind. And you know, at the beginning of my speech yesterday, I talked about trade, I talked about the way the world was changing, and I know that you have been involved in conversations with, you know, amongst other people, Her Majesty's government in the UK. How do you feel? What's your take on things like Brexit, on things like the US? But you know, they haven't actually done anything, but there's been a lot of talk about changing the way the world trade system works. What's Shurooq's position on that?
Well, I think we are living in a transformation stage. We're living in a stage where every country is looking for its benefit, whether it's within an organization as the EU or out of the EU, for example. So, and I'm part of business dialogues that happens, or trade delegations that happens between the United Arab Emirates and different countries. So we've been to the UK. The UK has transformed after the Brexit. From my way of analyzing how it is, we are seeing the UK has a different mandate after Brexit to connect it to the, not even the UAE, but the GCC UK. I was actually there 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, and we felt that there is readiness and they're more keen to do business with the Gulf. And I feel before Brexit that was different.
I used a slightly different word, which I'm going to say. We haven't got any representatives of HMG here? No? I said we are quite desperate. We need we need to do deals. But I mean, sorry, I'm being bad about my government. But do you feel that they're very pragmatic and that the approach is, yeah, we want to do something?
I think, see, one of the things about the UK is that we have a long history.
Indeed.
And they have not developed and built on that history. And I think if we look at the numbers of UK investors in the United Arab Emirates, it's one of the highest, by the way. But government to government, we have not seen much of support. And yesterday, a big example is we have the CEO of Export Bank, Mr. Louis, was here yesterday just to show us how they're committed to basically support UK firms to basically come here to the Emirates. And so there is a huge mind shift. A week ago, I was with a delegation coming from Germany. They're also showing that they are, actually Germany, by the way, today is our biggest trade partner. Imagine in the Arab world, United Arab Emirates comes as number one when it comes to the trade, bilateral trade between the UAE and Germany.
Right, very interesting.
So imagine how big is the United Arab Emirates economy and how big is the Arab world's economy, and the UAE stands at number one. And when you talk about, for example, America is in a different status, I would say. UK is much more defined. They know what they want to achieve, at least with us, with the GCC, with the United Arab Emirates. But the Americans, I still think that they have a battle within their economy that they would like to fix before setting up a better relations with others. But I believe there are other nations that are very keen to start up government-to-government initiatives. And we've been in talks with, for example, the Italian government. They're so keen to attract investors from Italy to invest here and co-invest from the United Arab Emirates to Italy. The important thing when it comes to investment is basically those bilateral agreements, the no double taxation. Those are the benefits of a government to government. But if you're part of a European Union, for example, the dialogue, the interaction is much tougher, I would say. So today it's much easier to deal with Brexit, and I think the United Arab Emirates can benefit out of it, and the UK government can benefit out of our strong relationship. So I always look positive on what is happening around the globe. We have some sort of a united EU, with Macron being the new president of France. I would say a stronger united Europe than it used to be 2 days ago.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
So but the world is changing. We find it very positive. We find China opening up to the world. When I heard the premier of China was speaking in Davos, speaking about a globalized world, and when you hear from the other side in America, a world that looks in itself and in America's first. So we have a different. 30 years ago, it would have been opposite. America would talk about a globalized world. China would talk about its own economy. So the world is changing, and we are within that world that has to benefit of what makes it a successful investment for us. Within the Emirates, we are changing our regulations. We are changing our laws. We have set, for example, for an FDI percentage that we would like to increase it from 2.9 of our GDP to 5% within year 2021 within our strategy. Yeah. So to achieve a 5% increase of FDI from 2.9 to 5% out of our GDP, we need to do a lot of reforms and changes to attract more investors to come. We encourage investors to come because we believe it's beneficial for our economy to have more investors, foreign investors come and investing, not only in real estate, but in the mechanical industry, and the education industry, and the research industry, and in aerospace industry. So there are many industries that the federal government have, 7 industries actually, that the federal government have decided that we're going to happen to focus on. And we are encouraging investors, whether with new laws, setting up companies. Today we have 5149. Things are changing. We have a taxation policy that is coming up in 2018. So there are reforms coming up to make it easier even for an investor, even though we are a very welcoming city or a country. But there are many reforms that are going to come to have an effect on attracting more investors to come.
Very good. Well, I'd like to open this up for questions. I have promised you. I mean, I keep asking more questions myself. So if anyone has, like the gentleman there, would like to address a question to Marwan. Oh, I'm being told.
Yeah,
Oh, right.
This is Murthy. I am an investment banker based in UAE. My question is relating to the investment climate and your perception on UAE, and also global scenario, how it emerges. What are the 2-3 key challenges you see in the environment as of now? It is not a goody-goody situation. There are certain challenges, but we have to move on. So what are the key challenges you see in the environment for investment from your perspective and your experience? Thank you.
Good question. So, put you on the spot there, Marwan.
Sure. I would say one of the issues that we have when it comes to the investment climate is information. 4 years ago, when we started promoting Invest in Sharjah, and we created even a whole branding about Invest in Sharjah, we had basically not really an information about which sectors that are sectors that Sharjah needs to attract investments in. So we did a whole study about what are the sectors, and basically we set KPIs, and we said, so what will make a diversified economy for Sharjah more diversified? And we happened to come up with 4 sectors. One of them is travel and tourism, logistics, healthcare, and environment. Today, when we promote Invest in Sharjah, we can tell you exactly in healthcare what is really needed in Sharjah, what is the expected growth, how big is the market size. Some of this, when we talk about attracting investments, a lot of cities, when they promote themselves internationally, they say we welcome any investor. And that doesn't help any investor, you know. But if you tell them that I would like to attract investors in recycling, and guess what? It's not just recycling. I would like to attract investors in recycling PET. And our waste in PET is 2 tons a week. Those numbers, you can build on it. But if you go there with an open book that we welcome, yes, we welcome any investor, but if you specify which investments you want, that will make it much easier. And I usually talk about this with a lot of the investment promotion agencies around the globe. We had a dialogue in Davos with different cities, because today it's not countries that are competing, but there are cities that are competing. So within the Emirates, we have 7 cities competing to attract investments in different fields. And guess what? We're not competing on the same level. Everybody has a different case. So Abu Dhabi might attract investment in the oil industry. Dubai might attract investments in the financial industry. We would attract in the education industry, in recycling industry, in technology. So it's totally different. Information is key to success, I would say.
Okay, I have had conversations with investment agencies where they have proudly announced to me that they're targeting 28 sectors. And you just bury your head in the hands and go, right, well, that's not going to work, is it?
28 sectors. 4 sectors.
I know exactly. 4 sectors is...
4 sectors, and within the 4 sectors, we have within it sub-sectors. So when we say healthcare, we say hospitals, but we say pharmaceutical. And then you can go within it and to understand how big is the sector. We have a huge opportunity in each of those 4 sectors. So be defined, know what you want, achieve your results in an easiest way.
Now, like all good business people, you've turned that question around quite nicely. So I'm going to turn it back and say, the questioner asked about challenges. We did talk a little bit about trade. We talked about digitization. You've put forward a pragmatic and I think realistic view of the world. But you must see there's some potential areas of difficulty on the horizon. I mean, how, for example, does the low oil price impact what you're doing?
I think everything happens for a good reason. A low oil pricing was beneficial when the government have reduced the subsidization. So
Yep.
it was the perfect timing to reduce subsidization, because guess what? We had low oil prices and people would accept it. Imagine reducing the subsidization when the oil price was $120.
It wouldn't have gone well.
How much would you fill your Nissan Petrol or your Land Cruiser? That would be a huge challenge. But today it's much easier.
And you can drive a Tesla as well if you want.
You might
today.
even drive a Tesla that's standing outside. So I think we are moving towards a world that is changing. I think the government within the GCC, and not only the Emirates, has been supportive to the people here. And I think it's a good timing that we're reducing subsidization. Electricity, fuel prices are going within the $40 to $50, which are being accepted currently. It went down recently, but I really believe that it's for the benefit of us. So the governments were in some cases thinking of clean energy. They stopped when the oil prices went really high. Now they're rethinking about it. And guess what? Dubai have signed an agreement for the cheapest solar park, I think, in the history of this industry.
Amazingly cheap feed-in. I saw that. I agree with you. I mean, I got in trouble once in Kuwait a few years ago, and I was on a stage when prices were high, and they said, "What's the best thing you think could happen to Kuwait?" And I said, "If oil dropped to $5 a barrel, because then you'd have to do stuff, and you'd have to reform." And we're seeing that here. We're seeing that in other parts of the GCC. So it is a challenge. So you have answered the question, but it's also positive. I think I'm being given signals, but we've got chance for at least just one more question for Marwan. If you want to ask something in public, I'm sure he'd be willing to talk to any of you. Gentleman in the front row, Sadek there.
Thank you, Mr. Banks, Your Excellency. I think Sharjah has done extremely well in the education sector, and you have excellence with the American University of Sharjah. How do you view the importance of that sector, and what is your plans as far as attracting FDIs into that sector?
Very good question, thank you. So education, we heard from the AUS Governor, Dean, or whatever. Chancellor, that's right.
Yeah.
Sorry, thank you, Marwan. And also AUS Enterprises yesterday, so we had a bit of background on that. But what is Shurooq doing to attract investment into education? And this will have to be the last. I'm getting buzzed. So
yeah, I think education is something that the founder of the United Arab Emirates had set it up as one of the main pillars to create a strong economy. So I said, if I go back to this 1947 thing,
yep.
We had one school in Sharjah. Today we have more than 25 students graduating from the Emirate of Sharjah only. We have a focus on education. I would say in 1988, I believe the first university was created, which is the University of the United Arab Emirates in Al Ain. In 97, a big revolution happened in Sharjah when it comes to the education sector. We have a start of the American University, Sharjah University, the Heritage of Technologies, the Medical Institute, Police Academy, a huge transformation. Students are no longer traveling abroad as they used to travel abroad. They're studying in Sharjah because the caliber of those students when they graduate is up to the level of anyone coming from the States or coming from the UK
yep.
or from Australia. So the focus on education is key. But you would notice in Sharjah, the focus was to create homegrown universities and not franchises from around the globe. And this is something that was so unique to Sharjah. Today, the American University of Sharjah is one of the best 500 universities globally, which is a big impact to Sharjah's economy. So what does Shurooq do to attract more investments, I would say, in the education sector? I think the education sector is a sector that is handled by His Highness, the ruler of Sharjah, and he is very concerned on making sure that we are not diluting the sector by getting any university. So he would like to make sure that we retain a certain standards of education system. And this is what makes Sharjah totally different. 20 years ago, Sharjah didn't even have one university to that caliber. Today, 20 years down the line, we have, as I said, more than 25 students graduating. Almost 500 students graduate with a PhD level and a master's degree, which shows how the impact on it. The second level of the government was to focus on research, and creating a research and technology park was the second level of where the government of Sharjah is looking forward to. So there is a huge, I would say, changes within decades. So in 97, the education system started. In 2017, the research park is, and every 2 decades, Sharjah goes through a shift of a focus on what really it needs to attract investments and develop it. And in some cases, the government by itself invests in that sector to show the market that we are here to support the sector, and then we let the private sector to take it over. Sharjah was always known as an educational hub. Even when it comes to schools, students would actually come from Dubai, sometimes even from Abu Dhabi to study in Sharjah schools. So Sharjah was always behind becoming one of the cities that really focus on the educational sector.
It's a fascinating thing to think that Sharjah could be like the Oxford of the Emirates, you know,
Yeah.
where it's close to the sort of a bigger commercial center, but is its unique identity as a place of education. Notice I didn't mention Cambridge, because Cambridge is horrible. We don't go back, Oxford, man. But seriously, I think the future is in education, and having that here, I think, is an enormous boon to what you're doing. Unfortunately, we have to draw this to a close. We could probably go on all morning, but we have other panelists and speakers who we need to break on. So, well, I would like you to do 2 things. The first is to join me in thanking Marwan for his time
Thank you.
and his comments.
Thank you.